Have you ever wondered if you could actually calculate an apocalypse? Well, we've come across a source that claims to do exactly that. It lays out a step-by-step, mathematical breakdown of prophesied world events, pulling it all straight from Scripture. And we're not talking about some vague theory here. We're talking about a hard number. So, let's dive in and see how they get there. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the startling prediction itself. Then, we'll uncover the specific prophecy that acts as the anchor for the whole thing. After that, we'll walk through the actual math they use, see who's supposedly left standing, and finally, explore what this source claims happens next. So let's just get right to it. The number is 5.3 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. According to this source's analysis, that's how many people could perish from the earth. And get this, all of this is said to happen before the period known as the Great Tribulation even kicks off. It's an absolutely staggering figure, right? I mean, how on earth does someone land on a number that precise? This isn't just a number pulled out of thin air. It's the end result of a very detailed calculation based on reading specific biblical prophecies in a very specific order. So let's unpack the logic one step at a time. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, a startling predication. The whole foundation of this argument, really, it all comes down to one crucial thing: timing. So here's the core idea, the big claim that changes everything. The source argues that these huge cataclysmic events, the ones that wipe out 2/3 of humanity, they aren't part of the final tribulation. They're the opening act. They're the events that lead up to it. And that timing is absolutely key to their whole model. All right, moving on to section 2, the 2/3 prophecy. So that fraction, 2/3, where does it even come from? Well, it turns out this entire mathematical framework is built on one single prophecy, all the way from the Old Testament. And there it is. 2/3 will be struck down and perish, yet 1/3 will be left in it. So what the source does is pretty bold. They take this ancient ratio and apply it to the entire planet today. Their next move is to look through the book of Revelation to see if they can find a series of events that adds up to this exact outcome. And that brings us to section 3, calculating the cataclysm. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the math. So let's walk through the 3 key prophetic events from Revelation that this source uses to engineer that 2/3 outcome and get to that 5.3 billion number. The calculation is basically a 3-step process happening one right after the other. You've got the 4th seal, then the first 4 trumpets, and finally the 6th trumpet. Each event is said to take a specific fraction out of the world's population, and the losses just keep compounding. First things first, you need a starting number. To make this calculation work, the source uses a baseline of 8 billion people. That's roughly where our world population is right now. So that's our starting point. The first event comes from the opening of the 4th seal in Revelation. The really key phrase here is a fourth of the earth. The source reads that and says, okay, that means 1/4 of all people on the planet. So step 1 in the math is pretty simple. What's 1/4 of 8 billion? That's 2 billion people. So boom, after this first event, the world population in this model drops from 8 billion down to 6 billion. Okay, next up we have the first 4 trumpets. Now these are described as these massive ecological disasters. We're talking about events that poison the land, the sea, the rivers, basically crippling the planet's life support systems and leading to mass starvation. And this is where the source makes a really critical assumption. Their logic is, if you destroy 1/3 of the planet's resources, it makes sense that you lose 1/3 of the people who depend on them. So they take the remaining 6 billion, calculate 1/3 of that, and that's another 2 billion gone. Now the population is down to 4 billion. All right, now for the third and final event in the chain, the 6th trumpet. And what's interesting here is that, unlike the last step, which required some interpretation, this verse is super explicit. It literally says its purpose is to kill 1/3 of mankind. This is the last piece of the puzzle. We're at 4 billion people. 1/3 of that is about 1.33 billion. You subtract that, and what are you left with? Roughly 2.67 billion people. And here's the kicker. 2.67 billion is exactly 1/3 of the original 8 billion. The math lines up perfectly with the Zechariah prophecy. All right, section 4, the remaining 1/3. Now that we've gone through all that grim math, let's step back and look at the final tally of this whole thing. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? You see the fourth seal, then the trumpets, then the sixth trumpet, each one taking its toll. The causes range from war and famine to ecological collapse, and finally, a supernatural army. It all adds up to that staggering total decrease of 5.33 billion people. And when you look at it like this, it's crystal clear. The step-by-step math leads directly to a 2/3 reduction in the global population, leaving exactly 1/3, or 33%, to survive. It's a perfect match for that 2/3, 1/3 ratio from the prophecy that started this whole thing. Okay, last section. So what about the survivors? What happens to the roughly 2.7 billion people left after all this devastation? This is where the whole calculation connects back to other famous end times prophecies. According to the source, it's only now, after the world has lost 2/3 of its people, that the 42-month period we know as the Great Tribulation actually begins. And it's for the survivors, the remaining 1/3 of humanity. And this is probably the most crucial takeaway from this source's timeline. The enforcement of the mark of the beast isn't what causes all this death and destruction. No, in this model, it's an event that takes place after the world has already been tragically transformed, and it targets only the survivors. So, when you boil it all down, what we've just walked through is a really specific, highly structured theological argument. It's an attempt to build a step-by-step mathematical roadmap by linking different parts of Scripture together like a causal chain. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is this a faithful interpretation of prophecy revealing a kind of hidden timeline? Or is it more of a modern mathematical exercise where today's population numbers are plugged into ancient symbolic texts? That is the question right at the very heart of this apocalyptic calculation.